I've been debating for a long time as to whether or not I should make this video, because something like this has real-world implications in a way that none of my other videos really have. When a coach does something stupid during a game, it's not as though my video is going to be the reason that people hate that coach or that the coach gets fired. No general manager in their right mind is on the fence about firing a coach, and then they watch my video and they come to that conclusion. When a player does something immoral or illegal, it was already reported on by a much larger publication that has a much larger platform than the one I have, like ESPN or a major newspaper. So my video isn't really putting a dent in that. Plus, it probably happened years and years ago, so it might make no difference today. But here, this video has real-world implications. I'm talking about someone on this platform, and this could jeopardize their credibility, jeopardize their way of living, and jeopardize their career. And it's someone that you might be familiar with. And I'm blessed to have this platform. You guys are the reason that I'm able to do this for a living, and I can't thank you guys enough for it. Really, I can't. This is the dream job. And I recognize the responsibility that I have and recognize the power that something like this could bring. So I don't take this lightly at all. You guys have given me this platform to talk football and the NFL. And if I betrayed your trust with what I'm about to say in this video by going off script and by using this platform in a different way, in what you might consider a bad way, I apologize. That is not my intention at all here. But I'm making this video for two reasons in particular. Number one, something like the actions of this creator impact all of us. It impacts all of our credibility and impacts all of what we do. When one of us engages in practices like this, it makes it seem like we all do that. It's why the Carissa Thompson silent report controversy was so widely criticized by silent reporters who are doing things the right way. It makes every silent reporter seem as though they lie. This video feels like it needs to be made to protect the credibility of not just myself, but the other sports YouTubers who are blessed to do this for a living, and the other sports YouTubers who want to do this for a living and deserve a platform. And I hope to amplify some of those in this video so it's not all doom and gloom. But number two, a recent video by Bomber Guy highlighted the issue with some other YouTubers that I'm going to talk about today. He spoke about the issue of plagiarism on this platform, and it's a 4-hour-long video that I highly recommend. And ever since that video, a lot of other creators, such as Todd in the Shadows, have been empowered to speak out about this. So I thank Bomber Guy and other creators who have spoken on this issue for taking the first steps, because I would not be able to do this without you guys. Without you paving the way and empowering me to speak up, this would not be possible. So with that being said, we need to talk about plagiarism on the platform, and one particular YouTuber that has impacted the credibility of all of us as a result. Sports YouTube is just a fascinating idea in theory. You're telling me that you can just talk sports for a living in front of your computer and be your own boss? That sounds like the dream job. Really, you tell the average kid who loves sports growing up that they don't have to work for anyone. They don't have to get dressed up every day, they don't have to commute, and they can just talk about their passion all the time and talk about whatever they want, whenever they want. And obviously, there is a ton of work involved. It's a lot of all-nighters, and I'm working way more than I ever would be as a lawyer. But it never feels like work. It feels rewarding. I wake up every day blessed to not only do this and to have a community, but to be surrounded by peers who feel the same way. And I think it will be assuring to you that the sports YouTube community is a super tight community. Sure, there are rivalries on the field when it comes to our favorite teams, but when it comes to us as people and our careers, the sports YouTube community is extremely friendly and extremely collaborative with each other. There is no real behind-the-scenes drama. Odds are, if you watch my videos, you're watching the videos of another YouTuber in the sports industry, and our videos will be recommended on your feed through the algorithm. And odds are, if you're watching one of those creators and are a fan of one of those creators, there's about an 80% chance that not only am I a fan of that creator, but that I personally know that creator. We are constantly collaborating with each other on thumbnail ideas, video ideas, ways to improve videos, and just ribbing each other and talking about what's happening in sports. It's amazing knowing that guys I looked up to that helped inspire me to make this channel in the first place are now guys that I consider some of my closest internet friends. We all recognize how fortunate we are to be able to do this for a living and to have cultivated a following. A lot of us worked the 9 to 5 and found themselves stuck in a career that either wasn't fulfilling, wasn't paying a lot, was taxing on the body, or some combination of the three. And to know that you can literally sit in front of a camera and talk sports, which I think is just about every 10-year-old's dream, is amazing. And it's something that I don't take for granted. And I know a lot of my fellow content creators don't take for granted either. The vast majority of sports content creators are guys that either I am fans of, talk with regularly, inspire the channel, collaborate with, or some combination of those. Having said that, you know what really grinds my gears? Plagiarism. This probably shouldn't be too surprising if you know my background. I graduated as a sport communication major with a track in journalism, and I felt going into college that I was going to go into that field before I quickly discovered that jobs were being slashed left, right, and center as print media was dying, and the pay wasn't that great. Side note, if your professors tell you that you should not go into a field, and they're teaching that field, that's probably a pretty good indication that you should not go into that field. I was in the trenches doing tons of investigative journalism and reporting, usually about mundane things in the grand scheme of things like sports, but I vividly remember being one of just 2 people in the interview room when we all knew that the coach of the men's basketball team was about to be fired and asking the tough questions after a season-ending loss. I then went on to a top 25 law school. And if you know anything about law school, it's that there is a lot of writing. You're writing motions and contracts and arguments constantly. And if there's something that was very apparent between my journey throughout my journalism career and my law school career, before I became blessed and fortunate enough to be able to do this full-time thanks to you guys, it's that plagiarism is not okay. Lying about the facts is also not okay. Hence why the Carissa Thompson story, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, struck such a nerve with me. But if there's anything that is right up there with just blatant misinformation, it is passing off something as your own when it is not. By definition, that's what plagiarism is. Taking credit for someone else's work by passing it off as your own. And if you've watched my videos, you can probably tell that I am extremely vigilant when it comes to plagiarism, and not wanting to merely steal the work of other reporters that paved the way. It's wrong, unethical, immoral, and it's just gross on so many levels to do that. In every single video that I do about a historical event, I make sure to cite the article by showing you where I got it from. If there is a direct quote that I am reading from, that quote stays up there the entire time. And not once do I even try and pass it off as my own work, because it's not. I don't just reread articles word for word and claim it as my own, while the original author probably didn't get paid a lot for this, or is dead. I add insight and a historical background, and explain why the comments in question make sense or don't make any sense. If there's nothing I can add on the topic because someone went that in-depth about it that there's nothing left for me to do and nothing left for me to put in, guess what? I don't make the video. One of the most common video requests I've gotten over the years is to do a video on how Fox acquired the rights to the NFL at the end of the 1993 season, and how they got everything going from being an upstart network to showing the NFL, and hiring the legendary duo of Pat Summerall and John Madden. And barring anything crazy, as much as I love broadcasting topics, unless I can find some new angle, I will never make that video. Why? Because there's nothing I can add to the topic that hasn't been done already. The Ringer put out one of the best oral histories I've ever read in my life, detailing everything that went into the move and getting everything set up. I'll leave a link to that article in the description, because I remember reading that when it came out all the way back in 2018. And 5 years later, it's still just as good. And Brian Curtis did an amazing job writing that story. And you'll be happy to know that the vast majority of sports creators do this. You don't need to have a journalism background or a law background to know what you learned in elementary school. That stealing is bad, and that you need to properly attribute your sources. It's not rocket science. If they're not your words, then make sure that everyone knows that it's not your words. Urinating Tree is a content creator that I respect greatly, that I'm close friends with, and that inspired me to make this channel. Occasionally, he will do history-related videos, Like an amazing video he did on the Tennessee Oilers, and how the 1997 season when they played in Memphis was such a disaster off the field, which I'll link in the description. And guess what? Anytime he cites something, he shows the article on the screen so you can see it. KTO is an amazing content creator that talks about football, and he routinely cites his sources. Heck, there are times where he will directly cite me.
According to Reddit user JaguarGator9, who's also a YouTube football historian, the Jaguars offense didn't cross their own 37-yard line until there were 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. I found a Reddit post by who else, JaguarGator9, where he laid out every NFL team to make the playoffs with a negative point differential from 1978 to 2014.
I'll leave a link to that video in the description as well. I've even had people privately message me saying that they want to do a video on something. They saw that I did something on that, and they ask if they can do one. To which I will always say yes, because I'm absolutely flattered by that, and the fact that they got inspiration from me. Plus, I'm talking about a factual event, so it's not like I have ownership of a fact. I could go on, because like I said, the vast majority of content creators in the sports industry do things the right way. They won't plagiarize, and they'll attribute their sources properly so that if you want to dive deeper into a subject, you can just go there and do some more reading yourself. If you want this video to be a takedown of the entire sports YouTube industry, the vast majority of whom I'm super close with and have principles and journalistic integrity, this is not that kind of video. If anything, I hope this encourages you afterwards to watch creators, no matter how big or small, who constantly put out great content and do things the right way. And I hope to promote some of the many creators in this video who are doing things the right way and are actually doing more than just plagiarizing material from others and passing it off as their own. Because there are a ton of creators in this field who deserve your support that you might not know about, which is what makes the story and the incident in today's video all the more frustrating. Because all of this is leading up to this man right here. Perhaps no sports creator in the year of 2023 has had as meteoric a rise as Depressed Ginger, who goes by the name of Patrick. At the start of 2023, he had just under 20,000 subscribers. By the time of this upload, that number has nearly quadrupled to just under 80,000. According to Social Blade, his videos average somewhere around 100,000 views per day, which is an incredible number. I don't want to speculate on anything financially, but I will say this much. If you are a sports content creator making videos that are routinely longer than 8 minutes and 10 minutes, and you're averaging 100,000 views a day, and none of your videos are getting copyright claimed, you are able to comfortably live. We're talking comfortably in the 5 figures a month range. Patrick is in his mid-20s, and did not go to college. By his own admission, he barely passed high school, routinely skipping class, and graduating with a C-.
We probably had like 600 or 700 kids in our graduating class in high school. The only reason I know that is because at the end of the year, they give you, where you finished in your class in terms of how good was your grade point average and things like that. I was like 500 out of 600 kids or something. I like averaged maybe a C-.
By his own admission, the only reason he passed some of these classes is because his high school was ridiculously lenient. Because in his words,
I did pass Spanish 1 because you literally have to be, I was going to say mentally retarded. You have to be very dumb not to pass high school classes.
I'm not going to dive into his viewpoints or beliefs or word choices because that is not the point of this video. I just want to focus on the plagiarism aspect. Even though I could talk about how there was an Indian student by the name of Siddharth who goes to Georgia Tech and worked for NASA before he turned 20. And how he was participating in the Dr. Pepper Challenge to win some college tuition money. And Patrick said this.
Dude, who's the Indian dude? Oh my god. An Indian phone scammer.
And I could talk about what he said, that becoming trans was nothing more than an attention grab.
Thoughts on Mr. Beast, trans, yeah. It's an attention grab. It's bullshit.
And I could talk about how he compares what he does with YouTube to literal slave work.
My content here is, honestly, I am thankful that football is over. It got to the point where it was borderline slave work.
But I'm not going to do that, just so we can stay on topic, and so that I can have a cool head while recording this. because the last thing I want to do is blow a casket about a man comparing making videos while stealing other people's content to being whipped and dying and working long hours in the field just because of the color of your skin. But I digress. All of that aside, one of the only reasons he passed high school in the first place was because he had a 67 in chemistry. He decided to skip the test, and his teacher didn't notice and gave him an exempt grade, keeping his grade at a 67, which was not failing. Just keep all of that in mind here. And this is not me taking a holier-than-thou approach or claiming that I'm better than him by any means. Trust me, I am not saying that whatsoever. The part about not doing well in school, and especially in science, will become extremely relevant later on. However, he knew deep down that YouTube was what he wanted to do. After creating a first channel which didn't go anywhere, and while bouncing around between 3 different jobs, all of which he got fired from or left because he either didn't show up to work or was tired of being reprimanded for not working.
And dude, I would spend like 20 minutes just sitting in the bathroom stall on my phone, and I think they knew it. Like, I remember one time they sat me down, the boss and maybe an assistant that worked at the desk, they sat me down and they were like, you got to do a better job, whatever. We were all we were terrible workers and terrible employees. We would just talk to each other the whole time. We would accomplish basically nothing. Basically, it was the last night. We were both quitting. We both had already had strikes.
He created this channel, which has become his bread and butter. And I think it's undeniable to say that his channel has been highly successful. Anytime you can make a living off of YouTube, your channel is successful by that metric. And his absolutely is. He's been averaging roughly 3 million views per month. He says that this is now his full-time job. And in streams, he's talked about moving out shortly to buy a house with a lot of land, presumably somewhere in South Dakota. In a 2-year stretch, to go from having a minimal following to being on the verge of that coveted silver plaque for 100,000 subscribers is remarkable. It really is. He's carved out his niche and seems to have a fan base that follows him and watches his content, which is what any creator wants. However, if you scroll through his channel, you might notice 2 things that are rather off. Number 1, he uploads a crap ton of content. And I truly mean a crap ton of content. He's pumping out an average of 4 videos per day, which is way above the norm for any content creator, let alone a sports creator. I'll try and get 2 videos done per day, and even that is a lot. To do 2 heavily researched, heavily edited videos, write the scripts for all of them, and go from there is a lot. But it's the standard I've set for myself, or at the very least, tried to set for myself. 3 videos a day is my absolute max. Putting out 3 videos in one day is truly an all-day and an all-night affair, and it's something that I will rarely, if ever, do, unless it is timely for me to do so. To put out 4 videos a day every single day of that length, that either means one of 2 things. Number 1, he has a team working for him, which would at least make sense if he could get so many videos out per day. However, we know that he doesn't have a team, because he has talked about how he does all his own work. Or number 2, well, we'll get to the second explanation in just a bit. Number 2, though, his content is extremely diverse, as he is supposedly an expert on a ton of different topics. It's not as though he's an expert on just sports. He's an expert on seemingly everything under the sun. One scroll through his channel, and alongside the myriad of videos on college football and the NFL, you'll see videos on 9/11, Chernobyl, Legos, defunct buildings that are not stadiums, amusement park rides, Disney, Dubai, Tinder, weird store locations, cryptocurrency, and politics. And this is all just in the past month. I am not exaggerating. All these videos have come out in the last month. And it's not him reacting to stuff, it's him informing you about stuff in these specific areas. Think about what the average content creator knows a lot about and proclaims themselves, by virtue of putting out that content, as the voice of authority and as a credible source. And now, think about that. Heck, I will still sometimes feel imposter syndrome talking about the NFL, even though that is my quote-unquote area of expertise. And here is Depressed Ginger proclaiming himself as the voice of authority on just about everything. And in fairness, he could know a ton about all of those topics. He could be a man of many diverse tastes and be well-researched and a Renaissance man of sorts. It would be unlikely, since again, this was a man who graduated with a C- and showed no real interest in school or anything like that. But it's possible. However, one quick dive into the content, and it becomes very apparent that this is not the case. Take this video, for example, where he says that a ticket of Vivek Ramaswamy as president and Elon Musk as vice president would be unbeatable.
Could you imagine Vivek and Elon Musk with Elon as the VP? Guys, I mean, that would be an unbeatable ticket, legitimately. If you look right now, Elon Musk's approval rating sitting at around 89% amongst conservatives, Democrats, independents. He is beloved by everyone.
Now look, I don't want to make this about politics or different viewpoints at all. But if you had any basic knowledge of how America works, you would know that this is literally not possible, seeing as you must be a natural-born citizen of the United States to be the vice president. And oh yeah, Elon Musk was not born in America. Whether you like Vivek or don't, or whether you like Elon or don't, that's beside the point. I really don't care. Elon literally cannot be the vice president under any circumstances. It's like looking at the best quarterback right now in 10th grade and legitimately saying that your favorite team should draft him at the 2024 NFL Draft. It is not possible. Or take this video about Nissan Stadium, where he proclaims that a giant problem with the stadium is its poor location, as it is not downtown.
The idea of where it's located, there's really no incorporation to the city.
And look, I agree. Downtown stadiums are way more preferable to me than stadiums in the suburbs. And that would be a great argument about Nissan Stadium, if not for the fact that it is literally downtown. Seriously, it is less than a mile from Broadway. There is a pedestrian bridge from downtown. When the NFL Draft was held there in 2019, the NFL fan experience was held at Nissan Stadium due to its walking distance and proximity to downtown. Saying that Nissan Stadium isn't in downtown Nashville is like saying that MetLife Stadium is in Rhode Island, or that Yankee Stadium is the home of the Los Angeles Dodgers. It is an objectively false statement. He also claimed that the Titans once had to postpone a game due to a crack in the stadium.
Giant crack in the concrete of one of the, sections of seats. That was pretty crazy. I think they had to postpone a game because of that.
Yeah, that never happened. The Titans did postpone a home game once, but that was in 2020 due to the Titans catching COVID. It had nothing to do with the stadium itself, so once again, that is an objectively wrong statement. And this happens in a lot of stadium videos of his, where there are blatant and obvious factual errors. In one video titled Stadiums Built in the Middle of Nowhere, the first stadium he listed was Dodger Stadium, saying that it was built 80 years ago on vacant land.
I mean, this construction was like 75, 80 years ago anyways at Chavez Ravine, and that's why you see all around Dodger Stadium just a bunch of nothingness.
Not only was he off by a solid 2 decades, but it wasn't vacant. Quite famously, I might add, they used eminent domain to kick people off of their property. That land was very clearly occupied. Or there's this video where he talked about tropical domes. See if you notice anything bizarre about what he considers to be tropical.
And what I mean by tropical domes, basically it's an arena or a domed stadium located in a tropical place like Florida or California or Arizona.
I can assure you, as someone who lives in Arizona, it is not tropical. It is a desert. It is a freaking desert. Arizona is not a tropic state. In fact, one simple Google search will specifically confirm that I do not live in a tropical state. So that raises the obvious question. Depressed Ginger's channel is based on churning out tons of content on a wide variety of subjects, but subjects that he is clearly not well versed in. So how does he do it? Outside of making the videos as easy to produce as possible by not showing videos, and instead just showing still images with a Ken Burns effect. How can he possibly write scripts and offer new insights about all of these different topics every single day, and as consistently as he does. Simple. He plagiarizes. He passes off work that is very clearly not his own and pretends that it is his. Because in a lot of his videos, with no attribution whatsoever, he is just reading things word for word from other authors and other contributors. How much does he plagiarize? Well... Alright, fair warning. I came in with a lot of receipts here. I mean a lot and a lot of receipts. As you can probably tell by the runtime, a good chunk of this video is the evidence. There are chapters listed in the video if you want to skip to the bizarre twist that happened that I really did not see coming when going down this rabbit hole, and why exactly all of this matters. So if at any point you feel that it's evidence overload, you know where to go. But keep this in mind. This is just some of the evidence. This is not all of it. I don't know how many videos he has plagiarized like this, but there are a lot of them, as you're about to find out. And I'm going to be able to prove without any shadow of a doubt whatsoever that this man is nothing more than a content thief and a plagiarist who has no business being an expert on anything and who is destroying the credibility of sports YouTube. You've been warned. And keep in mind, I'm speeding up a ton of these clips specifically because if I didn't, this video would be over 10 hours long. I'm not kidding. Heck, there are clips that are sped up here, and this section is still an hour long. That shows you a lot right there. Remember that comment made about Nissan Stadium, where he clearly had no idea what he was talking about regarding the downtown location? Well, that's because in that part, he was just winging it to pad the runtime. The rest of the video is largely just plagiarized from Wikipedia word for word. On November 24th, 2023, Patrick put this video out. See if you spot, well, any similarities at all when it comes to the script. Keeping in mind that anything you see when it comes to the sources was put up by me and was not put up by Patrick.
During the preseason, the Houston Oilers faced the Washington Redskins in an exhibition game in Neyland Stadium, home of the Tennessee Volunteers. At the game was the Oilers owner. He met the Nashville mayor and began discussing the possibility of moving a team to Middle Tennessee due to the discontent with the team's lease at the Astrodome, the Houston Oilers lease at the Astrodome, and the unwillingness of the city of Houston to build a new football-only stadium.
Alright, we're just stealing directly from Wikipedia. 35 seconds word for word just coming straight from Wikipedia. Surely this can't be the bulk of the video, right?
The city and the team decided to locate a stadium on the east bank of the Cumberland River across from downtown Nashville in what had been a declining industrial warehousing area. In a special referendum in 1996, voters in metropolitan Nashville County voted to approve partial funding of the proposed stadium, which would end up being Nissan Stadium.
Oh no.
Also in May of 2010, the stadium's playing surface was filled with 6 feet of water due to heavy rains and flooding from that Cumberland River. The flood also reached down to the locker rooms of the stadium. The stadium did receive upgrades in mid-2012. Among the improvements were a new sound system, high-speed elevators to the upper levels, along with LED lights.
You might have also noticed something extremely subtle with that last clip that I'll play again.
Among the improvements were
Notice how when he starts the sentence among the improvements, he is about to say the word are, making that A sound, but he stops himself midway through to change it to were, almost as though he knows that this information isn't worded properly, and as though he knows what he's doing might be wrong, so he changes it. But okay, that's just one video where he's just blatantly copying and reading Wikipedia articles word for word and passing it off as his own research as if he did anything without properly attributing any sources. Maybe that was just a one-time thing. Whatever. Let's find another video, like this one. NFL games played at weird stadiums. Let's see how this video starts out.
the American Bowl, which was a series of NFL preseason exhibition games that were held at sites outside of the United States between 1986 and 2005. The league started the American Bowl in 1986 primarily to promote American football in other countries.
Let me guess. This isn't the only time he plagiarizes in the same video.
Now, the China Bowl actually never happened. It was the name of a proposed NFL preseason exhibition game that had been scheduled to take place in August of 2007. It was later postponed to August of 2009 so that more focus could be placed onto the start of the international series, and ultimately canceled between the Patriots and the Seahawks at the National Stadium in Beijing. In March of 2019, NFL reportedly discussed at owners' meetings whether it would play a game in China in 2020. San Francisco and Los Angeles, the Rams, were among the teams interested. Due to being located in the West Coast for less travel, it would take place prior to the start of the regular season in order to make up for the intense travel and the time difference. So
it's also very clear that he has no idea what he's talking about in this video when he's not just directly copying from Wikipedia, seeing as he talks about how the Rams-Chiefs Monday Night Classic from 2018, which the Rams won 54-51, was played there. Not only did he get the score wrong, but, oh yeah, the game was not played in Mexico City. It was very famously played in Los Angeles.
But there were some major field concern issues when the Rams and Chiefs played there. You guys remember that game, Jared Goff, Mahomes? It was like 52-49. People say it was the greatest regular season game in recent memory.
He also talks about England, and he's very confident in the resolution date, seeing as he just copied that from Wikipedia. But when asked to pronounce the names of stadiums and teams, he just makes up letters that do not exist.
In October of 2015, the league announced that a resolution had been passed approving continuing the international series until at least 2025 and expanding it to include international cities outside of the United Kingdom. The NFL has an agreement to play at least 2 games per year at Wembley. In addition, the NFL also brought in England's rugby's Twickenham Stadium between 2016 and 2018, and also now you can see Tottenham Hotspur.
And by far, in this video of his, the most egregious of the bunch, let's not just steal a few sentences, let's steal an entire freaking section.
The Bills-Toronto series is what it's called. It was an agreement between the Bills and Rogers Communications to host a series of the Bills NFL games at the Rogers Centre in nearby Toronto, Ontario, Canada, in an attempt by the team to broaden its fan base. The Bills-Toronto series was different from the NFL International Series because it is arranged by an individual team rather than the league. During the original 5-year deal, which began in 2008, the Bills played 1 regular season home game per year, as well as a preseason home game at the Rogers Centre in 2008 and 2010 for a total of 7 games in Toronto. So they had 1 regular season game per year from 2008 to 2013. The last time the Rogers Centre saw NFL action was 2013. Now, in 2013, the series was renewed for 5 more years through 2017. The new deal featured 1 regular season game each year, plus a preseason game that was going to happen in 2015. However, following the first contest in 2013, it was announced that Rodgers and the Bills had postponed the series for a year, and several months later, following the sale of the Bills to new ownership, the parties reached an agreement to cancel the Toronto series permanently.
This is a 10-minute video, minus the part where he's introducing himself and the topic and concluding and telling you where you can follow him on social media. The entire rest of this video consists of him either getting facts wrong or taking facts word for word from Wikipedia. Which raises the question, how far down does this rabbit hole go? As you might be able to expect, folks, this is not a 2-time incident. This happens a lot. And I truly mean a lot. Next up, college football bowl games that don't exist anymore. Alright, let's start with the Aloha Bowl. I actually know this bowl game pretty well. because I've done a few videos on my college football channel about it. You can watch one of those by clicking the card in the upper right corner. Let's see what new insights he has to say.
With the Aloha Bowl, which took place in Honolulu, Hawaii. It operated from 1982 to 2000. It was preceded by the Pineapple Bowl, and it was succeeded by the Hawaii Bowl.
All right, we're off to a good start. Just taking it word for word from Wikipedia. This is just saying words without knowing the meaning of any of these words. What about later in that video with the Grantland Rice Bowl?
The intent for the Mideast game was to match up the two best teams from 9 states, including Alabama, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Michigan, Mississippi, Ohio, Tennessee, and Wisconsin. In 1967, Louisiana was added to the Midwest region. From 1964 to 1968, the game was played at Horace Jones Field. In 1969, due to cold weather and declining attendance, it was moved to Baton Rouge.
Unbelievable. Couldn't even be bothered to change the names of the states around. At least try to make an effort, reword something. It's still plagiarism, but at least it's something. Next up, the Freedom Bowl. What insights from Wikipedia are you going to find here?
The bowl frequently invited a team from the Western Athletic Conference to compete against an at-large opponent. After the 1994 season, the Freedom Bowl was discontinued as the Western Athletic Conference's automatic bowl bids were reduced to 1, with the Holiday Bowl and the Cotton Bowl Classic having the choice of the conference championship.
Also, that sentence doesn't even make sense. They had their choice of the conference championship? No, they had their choice of the conference champion. It's not as though the Holiday Bowl or the Cotton Bowl was becoming the WAC championship. That's not how this works. We wouldn't say that the Sugar Bowl was becoming the SEC championship. You changed the words to make it seem like you weren't plagiarizing, and you created something that isn't even remotely true, which is what a lot of plagiarists do. If you watch the video by H Bomber Guy, you know exactly what I'm talking about. By the way, this video of his has over 18,000 views. If you actually want to learn more about the Freedom Bowl that isn't just regurgitated Wikipedia nonsense, there's a great video by Hardware Pod, a channel with barely over 100 subs that has less than 200 views. So you can go check that out if you want to see actual well-researched content on stuff like this. And I'll leave a link to that in the description. But now, getting back to the non-researched, heavily plagiarized stuff, because there is still so much more to go. Because if there's any one stadium or one team that he shouldn't have to rely on stealing from, it's the Cleveland Browns and their stadium. He's based in Ohio. He's a self-proclaimed Guardians fan. He knows the area. Surely he can offer some insight that isn't just...
During the 1999 season, Art Modell, the former Browns owner, announced his plans to move the team to Baltimore, which resulted in legal action from the city of Cleveland. The day after the announcement was made, voters in Cuyahoga County approved an extension of the original 1990 sin tax on alcohol and tobacco products to fund renovations to the original Cleveland Municipal Stadium, eventually as part of the agreement between Modell, the city of Cleveland, and the NFL. The city agreed to tear down Cleveland Municipal Stadium and build a new stadium on the same site using the sin tax funds. Modell agreed to leave the Browns' name, colors, and history in Cleveland and create a new identity for his franchise, eventually becoming the Baltimore Ravens, while the NFL agreed to reactivate the Browns by 1999 through expansion or relocation of another team. Demolition on the old stadium began in November of 1996 and was completed in early 97.
Figured. First off, it's not the 1999 season. The 1999 season wouldn't make any sense for Modell announcing the Browns' move to Baltimore, seeing as the Ravens were already in Baltimore, and the Browns had their brand new stadium in Cleveland. You changed the word, and it changed the entire meaning into something that's not true. But, okay. How many other stadium videos has he plagiarized like this? Let's take this one on Soldier Field.
The stadium's interior would be demolished and reconstructed, while the exterior would be preserved. Fans and radio hosts criticized the small seating capacity of the new venue, and others have criticized Soldier Field's grass surface after the first seasonal freeze and the refusal to consider a new generation artificial surface, leaving the Bears to play on dead grass. On January 19th of 2002, the night of the Bears' playoff loss to the Eagles, demolition began as tailgate fires still burned in the trash cans of the parking lots. They immediately removed 24,000 seats in 36 hours, a speed record never exceeded since. During the renovation, the Bears spent the 2002 season playing their home games at Memorial Stadium at the University of Illinois. On September 29th of 2003, the Bears played their first home game at the renovated Soldier Field. They lost to the Packers.
Yep, that's definitely plagiarized. Or how about this one on the Miller Park crane collapse, when people tragically lost their lives in the construction of the stadium?
Miller Park was one of the largest construction projects in Wisconsin history. It was built with an estimated budget just under $300 million worth of public funds from a sales tax that began in January of 1996. On November 9th of 1996, groundbreaking took place in the parking lot behind County Stadium, originally scheduled to be open in 2000. Miller Park's construction was delayed after 3 construction workers were killed in an accident in July of 1999.
That's how the video starts, folks. The first 30 seconds are just rereading Wikipedia. So not only is he profiting off of people's deaths, but he's profiting off of other people's works without adding anything substantive at all. But he's not done yet. Literally the first 2 minutes of the video is a word-for-word retelling straight from Wikipedia.
On July 14th of 1999 at approximately 5:12 p.m., the Big Blue collapsed during the construction of Miller Park, now called American Family Field, with a massive load containing 440 long tons and 500 short tons on the hook. The 3 iron workers were unfortunately killed when the suspended personnel platform in which they were observing the lift was hit by the falling crane. A safety inspector was filming the construction of the stadium on that day and captured the collapse on video as it occurred. Wind speeds were between 20 and 21 miles per hour, with gusts up to around 27 miles per hour at the time of the collapse. The boom was rated at 20 miles per hour, and other workers had expressed concern at the speed of the wind. An investigation revealed although the effects of the side winds on the crane itself had been calculated, it had not been considered for the load the crane was lifting.
And if he doesn't want to just plagiarize directly from Wikipedia, how about directly plagiarizing from other websites and credited authors, like he did with this video on the Roman Colosseum? I'm going to speed up his voice here just because if I didn't, this would literally be 3 straight minutes of nothing but plagiarism. And I am not kidding.
The Roman Colosseum took nearly a decade to build, which was actually relatively quick given the scale of the project, the biggest amphitheater in the world. The Colosseum officially opened in AD 80 with a festival including 100 days of games. Measuring some 620 by 513 feet, the Colosseum was the largest amphitheater in the Roman world. Unlike many amphitheaters which had been dug into hillsides to provide adequate support, the Colosseum was a freestanding structure made of stone and concrete. The distinctive exterior had 3 stories of arched entrances, a total around 80, supported by semicircular columns. Each story contained columns of a different order or style. Located near the main entrance of the Colosseum was the Arch of Constantine. Inside, the Colosseum had seating for more than 50,000 spectators, who may have been arranged according to social ranking, but were most likely packed into space like sardines into a can. Awnings were introduced from the top story in order to protect the audience from the hot Roman sun as they watched gladiator combats, hunts, wild animal fights, and possibly even larger combats, such as mock naval arrangements, for which the arena was said to be flooded with water. The Colosseum lasted officially around 4 centuries, until the struggles of the Western Roman Empire and the gradual change in public tastes put an end to large public entertainments by the 6th century AD. Even by that time, the arena had already suffered damage due to natural phenomenon such as lightning and earthquakes. In the centuries to come, the Colosseum was abandoned completely and used as a quarry for numerous building projects, including the cathedrals of St. Peter's and St. John. Beginning in the 18th century, various popes sought to conserve the area as a Christian site. In the 20th century, a combination of weather, natural disasters, neglect, and vandalism had destroyed nearly two-thirds of the original Colosseum, including all of the arena's marble seats and its elements. Restoration efforts began in the 1990s and have proceeded over the years as the Colosseum continues to be a leading attraction for tourists from all over the world.
You get why this is bad, right? Like, you get why this is not okay. You can't just take an entire article, read it word for 3 minutes, pass it off as your own, not even cite it, not credit anyone, and take all the profits. Or what about this one from Kauffman Stadium, home of the Kansas City Royals? Again, speeding this up so that this video doesn't take a gajillion hours.
And although it was a baseball-only facility, its design took several stylistic cues from multi-purpose stadiums of the day. The main stadium itself is primarily concrete with a smooth, uncovered concrete facade. The straps wrap around the infield and the ends of the foul poles with smaller bleacher sections or outfield plazas. When Kauffman Stadium was originally built, Kansas City was the westernmost major league city other than those along the Pacific coast, which was a major reason why the Royals initially decided to use a faster draining AstroTurf surface before the Rockies expansion franchise began playing in Denver. The Royals' home territory did include the Rocky Mountains in addition to a large swath of the Great Plains, and Kauffman didn't want fans who drove hundreds of miles to go home without seeing games completed. That is why they used the AstroTurf for better drainage. Prior to the 1991 season, a Sony Jumbotron full-color video board was installed beyond the left field wall. It was the largest of its kind in the United States when it debuted and remained in use through the 2007 season. In order to generate more home runs, Kauffman Stadium's outfield fences from bullpen to bullpen were moved in 10 feet from their original dimensions, and the outfield wall height was reduced from 12 feet to 9 feet prior to the 1995 season.
Or what about Civic Arena, home of the Pittsburgh Penguins? Once again, sped up.
It was constructed all the way back in 1961, the first retractable roof major sports venue in the world, covering over 170,000 square feet, constructed with nearly 3,000 tons of Pittsburgh steel. Even though it was designed and engineered as a retractable roof dome, the operating cost and repairs of the hydraulic jacks halted all retractions after 1995, and the roof stayed permanently closed after 2001. The roof, which was supported by a 260-foot arch, was free of internal support, leaving no obstruction for the seats within. The roof had a diameter of 415 feet and was divided into 8 sections. 6 sections could fold underneath 2 within 2.5 minutes. The arena's capacity fluctuated depending on the event being hosted, but it was increased due to additions between 1972 and 1991. The arena originally consisted of only lower bowl seating, but over time, upper decks were installed to the arena's end zones to increase the capacity. And between 1964 and 1973, the arena hosted 14 regular season NBA games, primarily as a satellite city for the Philadelphia 76ers. At its closing in 2010, the Civic Arena was the oldest and third smallest arena in the NHL by official capacity. In later years, the arena's staff was forced to use space for multiple purposes, never intended on the building's original design. The Penguins franchise agreed to a deal with the city and state officials to fund a new home arena for the franchise in March of 2007. The PPG Paints Arena is located across the street from the former site of the Civic Arena and has a higher capacity.
Once again, the vast majority of the video was plagiarized, with a few word changes like changing the word in to on, in a way that doesn't make any grammatical sense whatsoever, but is done so the changes are just subtle enough that you might not notice. The Rogers Center in Toronto? He's got a video on that, and you can bet your bottom dollar that he absolutely plagiarized it.
The idea for building a dome stadium can be traced back to the bid that Toronto lost to Montreal as the Canadian candidate for the city of the 1976 Summer Olympics.
Metropolitan Stadium, where the Minnesota Vikings and Minnesota Twins used to play before the Metrodome was built? He's got a plagiarized video on that, which I'll speed up so you don't have to hear a minute worth of him droning on reading Wikipedia word for word.
It was first theorized back in 1953, inspired by the Boston Braves' move to Milwaukee. Gerald Moore, the president of Minneapolis Chamber of Commerce, led the drive to lure an MLB team to Minnesota by constructing a modern stadium built to Major League specifications. After the rejection of numerous sites, a stadium committee appointed by Moore approved an 160-acre plot of farmland in Bloomington. The stadium would replace a park as the home of the American Association's Minnesota Millers. After a plan by architects won approval, groundbreaking was scheduled to begin in June of 1955. The construction was almost delayed, however, when the owners of the property began a protest claiming that they had not yet been paid. The dispute was settled in time for the groundbreaking to move forward.
Oh wait, there's more!
Although Metropolitan Stadium was responsible for bringing both MLB and NFL to the Twin Cities, it had not aged well. By the early 1970s, the Vikings were making noises about moving out. For instance, there was no prospect of building permanent seats along the third base side. The Vikings were not willing to pay to build seats in that area that would have been in the end zone for a football configuration, and the Twins couldn't afford it. At one point, there were plans to place a dome over Metropolitan Stadium or build a new football stadium located between Metropolitan Stadium and the Met Center, which had opened in 1967 just north of the stadium. It soon became apparent, at the very least, the Vikings would need a new stadium. As part of the AFL-NFL merger, the NFL declared that stadiums with less than 50,000 seats were inadequate for its needs. Discussions for a new stadium began in 1970, with 6 years remaining of both the Twins and Vikings leases. While the initial talks focused on a stadium for the Vikings, the Twins quickly joined the discussions. The idea of a dome was particularly appealing. Given the cold weather that is common in the Twin Cities early and late in baseball season, this accelerated the push for construction of a new stadium, and the Metrodome was completed in 1982.
Couldn't even change the part about the Vikings making noise about moving out. Couldn't change it to thinking about moving out or something along those lines. How blatant do you want to be? Oh wait, there's still more!
And Metropolitan Stadium itself was not maintained well at all. By the park's final season, broken railings in the grandstand's third deck had become a major safety hazard. Additionally, players had begun to complain about the quality of the field. The infield in particular was considered the worst in the majors. The Vikings played their last game on December 20th of 1981, and Metropolitan Stadium was officially abandoned when the Vikings and the Twins moved into the Metrodome in January of 1982. For the next 3 years, the stadium sat unused, decaying, and highly vandalized. Demolition kicked off for Metropolitan Stadium starting in 1985 and continued for the next 4 months. After the rubble was cleared, the lot sat vacant for several years, although the nearby Met Center continued to provide entertainment for NHL hockey fans for another decade.
This is a 10-minute video. At least 50% of it is just plagiarizing word for word from Wikipedia. The Kingdome in Seattle? You guessed it, it's plagiarized.
The Kingdome was a multi-purpose dome stadium located in the Industrial District neighborhood of Seattle, Washington. Owned and operated by King County, it is best known as the home stadium for the Seattle Seahawks and the Seattle Mariners. In 1959, this whole stadium ordeal kicked off when it was suggested that the city needed a covered stadium for a major professional sports franchise. A dome stadium was thought to be a must because of Seattle's frequent rain. In 1967, the American League granted Seattle an expansion franchise that would originally be known as the Seattle Pilots. The league clearly stated that Sick's Stadium was not adequate as a major league stadium and stipulated that as a condition to being awarded a franchise, bonds had to be issued to fund construction of a domed stadium that had to be completed by 1970. Additionally, the capacity of Sick's Stadium had to be expanded from 11K to 30,000 by opening day 1969 when the team was scheduled to begin playing.
The part that stinks about this is that the Kingdome is an absolutely fascinating venue, housing just about every sport under the sun, and having a design that stood out from other stadiums built in the 70s. There is a phenomenal video by a content creator named Labrise TV, who I'll leave a link to in the description. Their channel has half the number of subs that Depressed Ginger has, and this video only has under 5,000 views as of this recording, compared to nearly triple the views for Depressed Ginger, despite the fact that this video actually put in effort and had some great facts and a compelling narrative that you can't just get by skimming Wikipedia. Again, I highly recommend you check that video out if you want to learn more about the Kingdome. If you don't want a 30-minute video on the Kingdome, there's another channel called Forgotten Places that has a shorter but still highly informative video on the venue. His channel also has less subs than Depressed Ginger, and I'll leave a link to that video in the description. You get the idea. There's a lot of videos on the platform about the Kingdome that are actually good, and where you'll learn something, and that aren't plagiarized directly. But getting back to Patrick and his channel, this isn't the only piece of Seattle content he's plagiarized. What about a video on another team that played at the Kingdome for a bit? The Seattle Supersonics.
The judge rejected the request, and Seattle sued Bennett's Group to enforce the lease that required the team to play at Key Arena until 2010. In April of 2008, NBA owners approved a potential Supersonics relocation to Oklahoma City in a 28-2 vote. The approval meant the Supersonics would be allowed to move to Oklahoma City's Ford Center for the 2008-2009 season after reaching a settlement with the city of Seattle. Later in July of 2008, a settlement that allowed the team to move under certain conditions, including the ownership group's payment of $45 million to Seattle and the possibility of an additional $30 million by 2013 if a new team had not been awarded to the city, was reached. It was agreed that the Oklahoma City team would not use the name Supersonics and that the team history would be shared between Oklahoma City and any future NBA team in Seattle. The relocated team began play as the Oklahoma City Thunder for the 2008 season, becoming the third NBA franchise to relocate in the past decade.
I've done quite a few videos on Riverfront Stadium in Cincinnati, from the time in 1981 that the stadium was so unprepared for a playoff game that a fan literally robbed the concession stand of tens of thousands of dollars, to the time that the stadium sold fake seats for a preseason game because the venue was not ready, a la what happened at Super Bowl 45. You can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. But who cares about that, right? Because Patrick also has a video about Riverfront Stadium, where he's just reading Wikipedia.
One feature of Riverfront that distinguished it from other cookie cutters was that the field level seats for baseball were divided in half directly behind home plate, with the third base side stands wielded to left field and the ones on the first base side remaining stationary for conversion to a football seating configuration. The AstroTurf panels covering the tracks could be seen in left field during Reds games. For most of the Bengals' tenure at the stadium, the field contained only the basic markings required to play. Until the late 1990s, there wasn't a logo at midfield or any writings in the end zone, which had long become standard in NFL stadium.
While we're staying in that Midwest region of sorts with old stadiums, what about Tiger Stadium? Want to know more about why that stadium had to be demolished? Too bad. Patrick's just reading Wikipedia.
Demolition appeared inevitable in June of 2007. The Detroit Economic Growth Corporation approved a plan to demolish the stadium, which needed approval from the Detroit City Council. And later in July of 2007, the Detroit City Council voted 5-4 in an approval of demolition. And in October of 2007, an online auction of the stadium's memorabilia was held, which drew around $200K. The city used the money to help demolish the stadium, and the stadium officially started being demolished in June of 2008. A week into the demolition, it was announced that the field, foul poles, and flagpole would be preserved, and after a hiatus where various plans to preserve portions of the stadium were considered, it was completed and the stadium was officially fully demolished in September of 2009.
Or how about this one? Brookside Stadium, the biggest baseball stadium you've never heard of. All right, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Guys, this is the story of Brookside Stadium, located in Cleveland, Ohio, but it was considered a natural amphitheater stadium, primarily used for baseball, softball, and American football. The stadium was known for hosting a series of amateur baseball championships in the early 20th century, so the early 1900s, which set a variety of attendance records for amateur sports.
I love that his only original contribution there is clarifying that the early 20th century meant the early 1900s. Yeah, that's still plagiarism. Still very clearly plagiarism. Oh wait, he's not done yet!
The natural amphitheater that makes up what was Brookside Stadium emerged following the retreat of Ice Age glaciers. The land containing the stadium was part of the original purchase to establish the Cleveland Metro Park system all the way back in 1894. Now, the idea to make this a massive stadium originally emerged in October of 1908 when Cleveland City Clerk Peter Witt made a presentation to the Cleveland Athletic Club suggesting to the club's membership that Brookside Park needed an athletic complex to take advantage of the gift of the natural terrain. Witt envisioned a 100,000-seat stadium that would be the largest meeting place in the world, and it would potentially attract the 1912 Olympic Games. The plan was to begin with a smaller section of seating. The capacity was around 25K, which would have eventually been expanded to encompass the entire hillside and surround a 750-foot by 500-foot wide athletic field. By the time Witt made his appeal to the athletic club, the hillsides had already been graded and leveled by the city's parks department. Witt claimed that by November of 1908, the first section of concrete seating would be installed and that the entire stadium would be completed within a year. However, only a portion of this plan was ultimately realized.
I sped up the footage. This video was barely over 8 minutes long. Do the math, and about half the video is him just reciting word for word the Wikipedia article on that stadium. But maybe old stadiums aren't his strong suit. maybe propose stadiums that never happen, like West Side Stadium, which is what the Jets were trying to move into in the 2000s to have a venue of their own back in New York City, will be better for him. Or not.
The stadium would have been an all-weather facility with a retractable roof allowing it to be used either as an indoor convention hall or an 85,000, possibly reduced to 75,000, indoor-outdoor sporting event.
A sporting event what? You just chopped off the word stadium to change some things around, even though it makes no logical sense in the sentence to do so. I'll continue.
Now, this stadium, after the Olympics ended, was supposed to be the home of the New York Jets, who at the time of the proposal, which was around 2004, had played at Giant Stadium located in East Rutherford, New Jersey, and were junior tenants to the New York Giants. The stadium was to have served as the centerpiece of New York City's bid for the 2012 Summer Olympics, but after a heated debate, the proposal was defeated a month before the International Olympic Committee was to make its public decision. In the football offseason, the building would have possibly been used as a convention center for conventions as a replacement for Madison Square Garden. It was promoted by the New York City governor, the New York City mayor. It was promoted by the New York governor, the New York City mayor, and congressmen, but opposed by many of the local officials representing the area. The centerpiece of the city's bid for the 2012 Summer Olympics, the stadium, would have been part of a larger project to revitalize a long underdeveloped area. If it was built, the stadium was scheduled to host a Super Bowl in 2010, as well as a college football bowl game. And the site now, obviously, we know, is part of the Hudson Yards development.
Oh, I didn't add that screw up in there where he repeats his sentence after saying New York City governor and realized that didn't make any sense. That's in the final video, folks. That's in the final cut. Even in a video where he's just reading Wikipedia, he still can't do the bare minimum. And this is not me criticizing people for making mistakes. They happen. I've made mistakes in my life with these videos before. But you can see how lazy this is, right? But there's still more.
The stadium proved highly controversial because it would have been a major construction project requiring public financing, though many of its opponents supported a larger West Side Stadium development program. They questioned the economic benefit of a stadium that would have spent much of its time unused.
Once again, we see what it means to add words to things you don't know anything about to avoid plagiarizing. Though most of its opponents supported a larger West Side Stadium development program? How does that make any sense? Most of its opponents supported a stadium, but opposed the stadium? You mean West Side Development Program. And again, these things matter. It's one word, but it matters, because it changes the entire meaning of the thing that he's trying to plagiarize and pass off as factual and his own. One more in the AFC East just for the heck of it. Sun Life Stadium down in Miami. Does he have a video on it? Yep. Is it plagiarized? Oh, you bet. Should I speed it up because it goes for 90 straight seconds? You know I'm going to.
And for the first 21 seasons, the Miami Dolphins had played at the Orange Bowl, which also hosted the Miami Hurricanes, the college football team's home games. But the team founder, Joe Robbie, explained what led to the decision to build a new stadium, saying, quote, "In 1976, the city of Miami wanted to quadruple our rent. That did it. I began thinking in earnest about building a new stadium. What made the construction of the stadium truly unique was that it was the first multi-purpose stadium ever built in the United States that was entirely privately financed." Robbie also believed it was only a matter of time before an MLB team came to South Florida. At his request, the stadium was built in a rectangular configuration with a field that was somewhat wider than was normally the case for an NFL stadium. The wider field also made it fairly easy to convert the stadium for soccer. Because of this design decision, the first row of seats was more distant than the first row of seats in most football stadiums. This resulted in a less intimate venue for football compared to other facilities built around the time, as well as the original Orange Bowl.
And just because I want to hammer this point home even further, and show just how deep this rabbit hole goes, and how it's not just a one-off or a two-off thing, but rather pretty much every single video of his, let's talk about the video he made for Salem Field in Buffalo. Shocker, it's plagiarized.
This stadium was the first retro classic ballpark built in the world, and of course was designed with plans for MLB expansion. Buffalo had not had an MLB team since the Buffalo Blues that played in the Federal League back in 1915. However, the Bison's owner, Robert E. Rich Jr., was unsuccessful in his efforts to bring an MLB franchise to the stadium between 1988 and 1995. The stadium, however, did get revived in 2020 and 2021 as home to the Toronto Blue Jays when they had to play in Buffalo due to the pandemic restrictions in Canada. The city of Buffalo originally hired a.k.a. Sport to design a $90 billion dome stadium with a capacity of 40,000 on 13 acres of land, but the project was significantly scaled back after the New York State only approved $22.5 million in funding instead of the $40 million requested, so they got their budget cut into almost half. A separate athletic facility to service the city campus of Erie Community College was part of the proposed complex and was eventually built, where HOK Sport designed the downtown venue as the first retro classic ballpark in the world. The open-air venue was designed to incorporate architecture from the neighboring Joseph Elcott Historic District. The same design firm would later bring the concept to MLB baseball with Oriole Park at Camden Yards.
Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia has a lot of fascinating stories, including the fact that they built the seats too low to the ground because they forgot to take into account the fact that people stand on sidelines during the game. So if you were sitting in the first few rows, you couldn't see anything. You can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. But Patrick won't tell you any of that, because shocker, his video is plagiarized.
As early as December of 1969, the Phillies expected that they would play the first month of the 1970 season at Connie Mack Stadium before moving into their new venue. However, the opening was delayed a year, the opening to Veterans Stadium, that is, because of a combination of both bad weather and cost overruns.
A stadium in Nuremberg that was never built because of World War II? Shocker! It's also plagiarized.
And after the war, the horseshoe-shaped foundation of the building quickly filled with groundwater and was named Silver Lake by locals. The site became a dump for debris of Nuremberg's destroyed buildings and any kind of other waste, including what today is considered hazardous waste. The southern part of the horseshoe was filled to ground level with waste in 1951. After that, a mountain of waste continued to grow until the dump was closed in 1962. The landfill was eventually covered with a layer of earth and trees were planted on it. The lower layers of water in the lake contain extreme high amounts of hydronic sulfide, which makes humans unconscious when breathed in. Approximately 50 people have already died in the lake.
NBA outdoor games? Another big shocker. It's also plagiarized.
In 2008, the Phoenix Suns planned to play a preseason game outdoors at Indian Wells Tennis Garden in California. The idea reportedly came from the Suns' part-time owner, who presented it to the Suns' president and CEO. The game, which was preseason, was played at a tennis arena in October of 2008 between the Suns and the Denver Nuggets. Both teams were affected by low temperatures around 64 degrees and high winds, 15 miles per hour, struggled from the field and shot below 40%, and only hit 3 out of 27 three-pointers. A lot of key players were out considering it was preseason. The game finished in a Nuggets win, 77-72. And due to the success of the 2008 game, the Suns decided to schedule more outdoor games in upcoming preseasons. In October of 2009, the Suns met the Golden State Warriors at Indian Wells. Due to poor weather, both teams struggled as they shot just 40% from the field. However, the Warriors did win that game 104-101, so more high scoring. And then a third game was played at Indian Wells, which was on October of 2010, so a year later, between the Suns and the Dallas Mavericks. Unlike the previous games, the weather was warm and windless. The Suns won the game for the first time, winning 98-90.
Sleep Train Arena, or Arco Arena out in Sacramento? Shocker, it's plagiarized.
In March of 2022, the Sacramento Kings hosted the final ever event at the arena. Fans were allowed to enter the arena, reminisce about the past memories there, and say their goodbyes. Now, the arena was never intended to be a long-term facility. Being a relic of the 1980s, it lacked a lot of the common things found in later, more modern arenas, like spacious locker rooms and wide concourses. The NCAA cited that the arena was not adequate for college basketball, let alone the NBA, prompting plans to build a new facility. In 2006, there was a campaign to build a new $600 million facility in downtown Sacramento, which was to be funded by a quarter-cent sales tax increase over the span of 15 years, but voters overwhelmingly rejected the ballot measures, leading for the NBA to step in and call for a new arena to be built.
Aloha Stadium? Shocker! It's plagiarized.
4 movable 7,000-seat sections, each weighing 3.5 million pounds, that could move using air casters into a diamond configuration for baseball and also soccer, into an oval for football, or a triangle for concerts. In early 2007, the state proposed to spend $300 million to build a new facility, as opposed to spending around $200 million to expend Aloha Stadium's life for 20 or 30 years.
Again, expend its life? You mean extend its life. But you didn't want to use the word extend because you didn't want to copy it word for word. So you just changed the word and changed the entire meaning of the sentence in a way that makes no sense. The Pontiac Silverdome, which there have been many great videos on and studies on, none of which have come from depressed ginger, you guessed it, it's freaking plagiarized!
$18 million with the idea of converting the Silverdome into a Hollywood-style entertainment complex following an earlier bid of $12 million. However, the city announced just a year later that the property would go to auction with no minimum bid, and that zoning regulations would be relaxed for any buyer in order to spark development.
I think you get the idea by this point. His videos are 100% plagiarized. He just goes to Wikipedia or whatever the website is that comes up when you type in the topic on Google on the very first link, and he just recites things word for word. And in case you couldn't tell, if stadiums are his supposed bread and butter, and if he is the expert on stadiums, and he's doing this, then what about things that he clearly knows even less about? Maybe he didn't know that he knew about that stuff. For example, did you know that Depressed Ginger is also an expert in defunct airlines? Oh, you didn't? Well, let's talk about the history of Aloha Airlines and see what Patrick has to say about this, shall we? Speeding it up again.
And the company employed local island residents with a slogan of being the People's Airline. Approval to operate was signed by then-President Harry S. Truman in February of 1949, with the first scheduled flight for June of 1949 following the ceremonies. In 1952, the airline reported its first annual profit, raking in about $36,000. Rising costs and economic stagnation in Japan put Aloha into a defensive position in the early 2000s, exacerbated by the September 11 attacks and the SARS panic in 2003, along with soaring fuel prices. In December of 2004, Aloha Airlines filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, but they once again filed for Chapter 11 in March of 2008, citing high fuel prices. Days later, Aloha Airlines announced the suspension of all scheduled passenger flights, with the final day of operation to be on March 31st of 2008.
Go figure, it's plagiarized. Or did you know about President's Park, the short-lived park in Virginia where you could see the heads of every single president? Well, if you didn't, Depressed Ginger is here to read you the Wikipedia article word for word.
It contained 18 to 20 foot high replica heads of the former presidents of the United States, from George Washington to George W. Bush. The park was opened in March of 2004. Creditors put the park up for auction, not including the heads, in September of 2012. By January of 2013, the heads had been moved to a private storage at a nearby local farm in Croker, Virginia, by Howard Hankins. In 2017, National Geographic showcased a video in which Mr. Hankins expresses a hope to rehabilitate the statues for the park in the future.
Or what about Wonderland Amusement Park, the knockoff Disney park from China? Bright Sun Films already did a very good video detailing the history of that park. But here comes Patrick to just read Wikipedia to you word for word and pretend he's the expert on a subject that he clearly knows nothing about, all while stealing the works of others who have done videos on that topic.
It's officially labeled as an unfinished amusement park project that was designed to be the largest amusement park in Asia, having to cover 120 acres or 49 hectares. Construction stopped in 1998 following financial problems with local officials, while a 2008 attempt to start construction again also failed. And the abandonment of such a massive construction project raised concerns about the existence of a property bubble in China. The incomplete and abandoned structures were demolished in May of 2013, leaving no hope for the abandoned park to ever be finished.
And it extends beyond just random amusement parks. A random city in China? also plagiarized.
Now, the construction of this housing district began around 2007. Its central feature is the 108-meter-tall replica of the Eiffel Tower, opening in 2007, and it can accommodate more than 10,000 residents. The initial occupation was low, with an estimated 2,000 people living in the development by 2013. Leading some to label it a ghost town. By 2017, its population has grown to 30,000, and the development was expanded several times.
Besides the fact that he called an occupancy an occupation, which is a job, which is something completely different, and once again, changes the meaning of the sentence into something that makes no sense at all, what's funny about this is that this city has a replica of the Eiffel Tower, and Patrick's thoughts on this are as follows.
We like how Paris looks. Let's just rebuild it and copy them word for word. I mean, this is plagiarism 101.
Oh, so he knows what plagiarism is at least? That's good to know. Oh, by the way, that's the entire Wikipedia article. He took the entire thing word for word. So he just spends the rest of the video to pad the runtime talking about the Twin Towers and the air pollution in China. I'm not making that up. Remember how I said earlier that the man would have failed chemistry if not for a technicality? Remember him saying how bad he was at chemistry?
And I will say the other class that I was fucking dog at, and I had no business passing this class, chemistry. I just couldn't understand it. I could not understand chemistry. There is zero chance that I should have passed.
And again, that's not a knock on him. Chemistry is a tough subject. I get it. Trust me, I was not great at chemistry either. But I bring that up because now, let's hear his thoughts on an Austrian scientist. Shocker, this is plagiarized.
Known as the Doomsday Equation, a 1960 issue of the Journal magazine included an article by von Forster and two of his colleagues proposing a formula representing historical data on world population. The authors then predicted future population growth on the basis of this formula. The formula gave 2.7 billion as the 1960 world population and predicted that the population growth would become infinite by Friday, November 13th, 2026, von Forster's 115th birthday anniversary, a prediction that earned the name the Doomsday Equation based on population data obtained from various sources. He and his students concluded that world population growth over the centuries was faster than an exponential. In such a situation, doubling time decreases over time. His tongue-in-cheek prediction on Doomsday November 13th, 2026 was based on an extrapolation into the future of doubling time, with the finding that doubling time would decrease to 0 on that date. Responders to his Doomsday prediction objected on the grounds that the finite human gestation time of 9 months and the transparent fact that biological systems rarely persist in exponential growth for any substantial length of time.
Honestly, does he have any idea what any of those words mean? Seriously, if you asked him to put that in his own words, could he do it? My money is on no. But here's my absolute favorite, by far. On November 25th, 2023, someone asked him in a live stream if he would do a video on Chernobyl. This was his response.
I've thought about doing a video on Chernobyl. I wonder how I should approach the topic. But yeah, certainly, it seems like such a worthwhile investment for me to try and tap into the Chernobyl viewership realm. I could do certainly, 10, 20 videos about that. But I have to study up on the topic first. I mean, I've seen the one TV series, but you've got to have a thorough understanding of something before you just start talking about it.
Alright, fair enough. He believes that you need to have a thorough understanding of something before you can start talking about it. And he's not going to just do videos on things where he has no understanding and has nothing to offer. I can respect that.
2 days later.
The Chernobyl Exclusion Zone, otherwise known as the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant Zone of Alienation, is an official designated area around the site of the Chernobyl nuclear reactor disaster, established by the Soviet armed forces soon after the 1986 disaster. It initially existed as an area some 19 miles in radius from the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, designated for evacuation and placed under military control. The borders have since been altered and cover a much larger area now of Ukraine. The exclusion zone now covers an area approximately 1,000 square miles in Ukraine immediately surrounding the power plant, where radioactive contamination is highest forest and public access and habitation are restricted. The exclusion zone's purpose is to restrict access to hazardous areas, reduce the spread of radiological contamination, and conduct radiological and ecological monitoring activities. Today, the exclusion zone is one of the most radioactive contaminated areas in the world and draws significant scientific interest for high levels of radiation exposure in the environment, as well as increasing interest from tourists. The zone has also become a thriving sanctuary due to the lack of human involvement, with some of the highest biodiversity and thickest forests in all of Ukraine.
You've got to be kidding me. Studies show that it takes about 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. Patrick can somehow do it in less than 2 days. How is that possible? It's not. In his eyes, thorough understanding means I need to skim the Wikipedia page, or I need to plagiarize. He's not done yet, though.
It was established on May 2nd, 1986, soon after the disaster, when it was decided by the Soviet government a rather arbitrary area, 19-mile radius, from Reactor 4. The zone was initially divided into 3 subzones, the area immediately adjacent to Reactor 4. The 3 different zones had different levels of severity. The first one, the most severe, the black zone, to which evacuees would never return to, the red zone, where evacuees might return to once the radiation levels normalized, and then the blue zone, where children and pregnant women were evacuated starting in the summer of 1986. The original 19-mile zone is estimated to be home to around 197 people living in 11 different villages, as well as in the town of Chernobyl. The number, however, is on the decline, down from the previous estimates of 314 in 2007 and 1,200 in 1986 when the initial disaster happened. The residents are mainly senior citizens with an average age around 63. After repeated attempts at expulsion, the authorities have accepted their presence and allowed them to stay with limited supporting services.
Okay, so while doing post-production for this video, I stumbled across another plagiarized video, and this might be the worst one of the bunch, because he didn't just steal from Wikipedia on this one. He stole from Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk, as in a guy who has a legal background. He graduated from West Virginia Law. So if Florio finds out about this for whatever reason, who knows what's going to happen. Not the guy you want to mess around with. But yeah, he stole an article that Florio wrote back in 2020, word for word, on a video about the time the Patriots almost moved to St. Louis. A fascinating topic that Depressed Ginger does not really go in depth into, because all he does is just steal Florio's words.
Now, a St. Louis native bought the Patriots in 1992 with the intent of moving the team to St. Louis, where the Patriots would have become the Stallions. The wheels were already in motion for the change to be made, but there was a problem. The Patriots had a lease at the old Foxborough Stadium that ran through 2001, and the owner of the stadium, who was Robert Kraft, refused to let the Patriots out.
I think you get the idea. There is not a topic in the world that Depressed Ginger isn't an expert on, which means there's not a topic in the world that Depressed Ginger isn't ready to plagiarize and steal from someone else. If you have ever watched a Depressed Ginger video that isn't him making predictions and talking about bets, odds are you've just watched someone discover Wikipedia for the first time and just read the words there word for word without having any idea as to what he's talking about. There is literally no difference. It's not just here and there. It's not just entire sentences. It's entire paragraphs. It's entire sections. And in some cases, entire freaking articles. And if you think we're done, oh no. We're just getting started. Because if you didn't think things were strange enough as it is, this is where things get truly bizarre. Now, you might be saying that this is completely unfair to him. I mean, sure, he plagiarized a little bit. And by a little bit, I mean a lot. And by a lot, I mean practically everything. But having said that, this seems like an ambush, don't you think? To just spring this up on him without giving him the chance to defend himself and let him tell his side of the story? Well, because I have a little thing called ethics, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to reach out to him personally and give him the chance to, at the very least, explain his side of the story and see what was going on. Maybe this was all by mistake. Maybe this was an accident. Maybe things have changed. But as we're going to find out, this is really, really bad. I reached out to him in an extremely cordial manner and said that after doing some investigation, I found that a lot of his videos were quite literally just word-for-word text from Wikipedia and other sources, and wanted to see what his thoughts were. His immediate response? This has got to be the worst scam attempt ever. Oh, Patrick, I can assure you, this is not a scam. I mean, that is rich that the man who shills cryptocurrency and has put out a video asking his followers to give him thousands upon thousands of dollars so that he can create a new coin by himself, even though by his own admission he lost money in crypto, is going to say that this is a scam.
If there's a developer that wants to contact me, you can watch my other videos. I am a legitimate person. And honestly, it would only take a few $1,000s probably, but it would be just a crazy ecosystem we could develop with sports and cryptocurrency. But either way, guys.
But anyways, he continues saying, you reference Wikipedia articles. They are free use. Okay, first off, I think you mean fair use. I have a legal background. I extensively studied fair use law inside and out. I can assure you, copying Wikipedia articles word for word is not fair use. Copying anything word for word is not fair use. And that doesn't even acknowledge the fact that he copied a non-Wikipedia article word for word. In fact, by Wikipedia's own terms and conditions, what Patrick is doing is strictly forbidden. You're allowed to reuse the work if you use small quotations of content with the source attributed. Copying and pasting entire sections from Wikipedia with no attribution is the exact opposite of doing that. Plus, almost every sentence in Wikipedia is required to have a source, which was written by someone else, maybe in an article or an actual book. So you're stealing from them. I've had my videos used as references before on Wikipedia many times, which is awesome, seeing as there are some players who have 1 or 2 sentence blurbs, and then I do a video on them, and their section expands. If you steal a section word for word from Wikipedia on that using my script, you're stealing from me, not Wikipedia. That's not how this works. The words just don't magically appear. Let's take this thing you said on Chernobyl, for example.
The residents are mainly senior citizens with an average age around 63. After repeated attempts at expulsion, the authorities have accepted their presence.
You think Wikipedia randomly wrote that? That was sourced and written by someone else, a man by the name of David Marples, whose article I'll leave a link to in the description if you actually want to reward someone for their journalism, and not this leech. You think the information in the sentence just came out of thin air and fell from the sky? No, it came from somewhere, and you got it from him. You got his phrasing directly from him. That's basic citation 101. Maybe this is just because I went to law school and did journal, and they take plagiarism very seriously at law school. But I never got my journal entry published as a side note, but it was written about violence in sports that is clearly not an inherent risk to the sport, like sucker punching someone after the play, and what can be done to combat this. Just very briefly, when you play baseball, you assume the risk that you could get hit by a pitch in the batter's box. You don't assume the risk that the batter is going to charge the mound and swing their bat at you. Stuff like that. But anyways, to get back to journal, to get onto the journal, you have to take a citation test, where you have to cite over 100 different pieces of work in 24 hours in the proper format, along with a few other things. This little thing is called the Blue Book, and the Blue Book and I got very acquainted, I will put it that way. This Blue Book has lots and lots of pages on how to cite just about anything and everything under the sun. I love this thing, and by love it, I mean I absolutely hate it. I never want to see it again in my life. This is the first time I've touched this book since I graduated law school. So we're just going to get rid of that right here. Now, am I saying that he should be citing his work using the Blue Book or MLA or APA or Chicago style or anything like that? Of course not. I don't even do that. Heck, I hated citations. I hated that thing. They were by far the worst part of writing for journal to have the proper format, especially because in your second year of law school and your first year on the journal, you're doing nothing but under-the-line citations. So you're just looking at things and seeing if they cited it properly, and it is absolutely painful. You literally got dock points for writing when you had an italicized period at the end of a word instead of a regular font period, because there is apparently a difference. Somehow you can tell the difference between a 7-point font italicized period and a 7-point font regular font period. Again, it is absolutely brutal. I hated it, and I'm not saying any of that. What I am saying is that I know a thing or two about citations and giving proper credit and attribution. And I can confidently say that not giving any credit and then saying that he doesn't have to give credit because he found it off Wikipedia is absolutely wrong. If I tried that in law school, I would have been kicked out immediately. Also, I have to hammer the point home here. Not citing isn't the issue. It's not about not citing your content. It's the fact that you're outright stealing content. It's not even close to fair use. A super brief legal lesson, although I could talk for hours about fair use and how it relates to YouTube because that is a big issue right now, and I'm not going to get into that, but briefly, there are 4 factors that you have to look at when determining whether something is fair use or not. As Patrick said, free use. Now, the second factor is kind of meaningless. We're not really going to focus on that. Courts have routinely made that the least important factor, and they don't weigh it all that heavily. But the other 3 factors, they are pretty important. One of them talks about the purpose of the material. Is this transformative at all? Does your work serve a different purpose from the work they are taking inspiration from? Or in this case, stealing? Well, clearly it doesn't. The purpose of the Wikipedia article is to educate and inform about a specific topic, or whatever article he stole from. The purpose of his videos is to educate and inform about a specific topic, using the same exact fact pattern. Another factor talks about the amount and portion used. How much of the material did you use, and was it substantive? Clearly, he's using a lot of the material, and using fairly relevant parts. Heck, sometimes he's just using the entire thing. 100% use of something? Yeah, that's not going to weigh in your favor at all. And does this impact the market for future works? Well, it absolutely does. If there are 2 videos or 2 works, one by him and one by the person who actually made that work, and you watch Patrick's video first, you have no need to watch the second video or read the second work, because it's the same exact thing. He could absolutely get sued for this. If he tried that on me, I'd be taking him to court right now. In no way whatsoever is this fair use. Fair use allows for you to take other people's works and make them your own for the purposes of commentary and critique, among other things, and to transform them into something completely different. It does not and has never allowed for this, as Patrick thinks. And then, as the cherry on top, he says, none of my sports content involves Wikipedia. Gee, that's fairly easily debunked considering everything we've gone through over the last hour. Talking about bowl games? Talking about defunct teams? Talking about stadiums where teams played in? That seems like sports content to me. If I did a video on a Veterans Stadium, I'm absolutely calling that sports content. Also, I love the fact that this is essentially an admission of guilt, as in, sure, my other content uses Wikipedia, but none of my sports content does. As if that makes it any better, which, spoiler alert, it does not, Patrick. It really does not. I assured him that this was not a scam, and as further proof, I sent him a media kit of the channel, which is essentially a detailed breakdown of how many views you got in, your demographics, your most popular videos, what topics your fans are interested in, and all that sort of stuff. It's mainly used to promote your channel to advertisers. So at this point, knowing that it's not a scam and knowing that this might be real, which, spoiler alert if you're watching this video, it absolutely is, Patrick resorts to plan B. Attack my subscriber count.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
He says, that channel says it has 53,000 subscribers and just 375,000 views? So you're basically averaging 1 subscriber every 7 views. Come on, man. First off, that's over a 28-day period. Lifetime, the channel has amassed over 24 million views, which is pretty similar to what his channel has, so equal footing in that regard. But this is a bizarre strategy. If I don't have as many views or as many subscribers as you, my opinion is meaningless, as though I'm beneath you. His argument has nothing to do with anything about the validity of my statement. Whether I have 1 million subscribers or 1 subscriber doesn't change the fact that he plagiarizes work and passes it off as his own. But this is very similar to a point that each bomber guy made in his video. If you view someone as beneath you, or unimportant, you don't value what they have to say. And look, I wasn't expecting a response from Patrick in the first place. I was actually kind of shocked. I just want to give him the heads up. I'm shocked he responded. But the fact that he responded by going from, this is a scam, to, even if it isn't a scam, I'm allowed to do this, to, even if I'm not allowed to do this, your channel is less important than mine, so get bent. That is quite the strategy, considering just the thought of me or anyone else doing that in this field is unimaginable. Seriously, can you imagine a guy like 5 Point Vids or Tom Grossi speaking down to people because they don't have as many subs as them? It's crazy. I mean, I can't imagine viewing someone's channel and opinion as lesser than mine simply because they have less subscribers. Because number one, that's not how this works. If it worked like that, then an astronaut's opinion on outer space would be completely meaningless next to Mr. Beast's opinion, even though we know that that's not true. Number two, you always have to remember where you came from. We all started from somewhere. And number three, There are amazing channels out there with a fraction of the subs that I have that I constantly watch because they put out high-quality things about things that I'm interested in. Walk-Off Studios, for example, is a YouTube channel with about 1,300 subscribers, and he posts weekly content about baseball history that I find fascinating and I never knew about. Is his channel 50 times less than mine? Is his opinion 50 times less valuable than mine? Of course not. That's an absurd way and a disrespectful way of looking at things. Also, by his logic, his most viewed video is about the Twin Towers and has 546,000 views. My most viewed video has more than double that. So by that logic, what does that make him? You get why this is an absurd and stupid way of looking at things, right? It's so ridiculous. It makes no sense. So yeah, bizarre approach there by Patrick. After that, he stopped responding to my email. And I thought that would be the end of it and his communication. I thought that would be it. But it gets even weirder, because after I did all of that, he took the bizarre approach of letting his followers on Twitter know that something like this was coming, posting the email that I sent. I mean, I wasn't going to show your email responses in my video unless you wanted me to, seeing as I view that as a private matter. But now, seeing as you showed it, I guess it's fair game. He responds by saying, "Let's go to war," which I don't even know what that means. What do you mean, let's go to war? If you mean a lawsuit, I mean, you can try. Good luck finding any lawyer that's going to take the case. You won't win because truth is an absolute defense, and everything that I'm saying is your exact words, and I have the evidence to prove it. But you had some of his fans defending him before even knowing what was happening. One guy wrote, "Oh no, a guy with like 4 subscribers is going to make a video on you." Yeah, I've got a little bit more than that. Another guy wrote, "You are the GOAT. These claims are fraudulent." I mean, I'm not really sure how this is fraudulent. If anything, it's the exact opposite of fraudulent. I laid out everything specifically that I was doing, so there's no deceit or dishonesty there. I have sources. I have his own words. I'm not making false accusations. But, okay. Apparently, my 4-subscriber channel is going to war over fraudulent claims. Because that makes sense. And my personal favorite, this stew needs to read the rules on fair use on YouTube before running their mouth. First off, wrong there. Second off, it's not like I literally went to law school and extensively studied fair use or anything like that, or have helped tons of creators on their fair use and copyright disputes. But you know what? Maybe he's right. Maybe I know nothing about fair use law. It's not like I have an entire 600-page textbook on specifically copyright law and fair use that I had to know every word to and read front to back in order to pass a copyright law class. Speaking of which, this textbook here is called Copyright Law, Essential Cases and Materials, 3rd edition. It's from Alfred C. Yen and Joseph P. Liu. And if you have this textbook and you want to flip to page 375, it talks about fair use. In fact, half the textbook talks about fair use. But it talks about Section 107, and it says specifically in this section, and I quote, that the legislative history of Section 107 provides a number of non-exclusive examples of fair uses that encompass these purposes, including quotation of excerpts in a review or criticism for purposes of illustration or comment, quotation of short passages in a scholarly or technical work, summary of an address or article, with brief quotations in a news report. I don't think any of those apply to Patrick's videos here, seeing as he's just stealing things word for word. Those aren't excerpts, and I can't really say anything that he's doing is scholarly work, because it's just taken straight from Wikipedia. So, yeah. Also, it's not like I fought off the NFL 700 times to fight fair use claims on my videos, and I've won all 700 of them, so I might know what I'm talking about here. But whatever, at least his side of the story is out there. But that raises the question I brought up at the start of the video. Why am I making this video in the first place? Why is this important? And why does this matter? You might be asking the all-important question. Why does this matter? You spent the last hour and a half or so just calling out all of this blatant evidence of plagiarism on the platform, but it doesn't impact you. It's not as though it's like law school where only a certain number of people can get specific grades. It's not as though YouTube is a bell curve. It's not as though my channel is being negatively impacted by this. Heck, my guess is that if you watch one of his videos, you might be recommended one of mine that I did on that same stadium that didn't involve me just stealing Wikipedia articles. We only have 24 hours in a day. And if people want to spend those hours hearing a man just regurgitate things on Wikipedia that he clearly does not know a lot about, If anything at all, let them live their lives. So at least from the outside looking in, this is not your zoo, and this is not your monkey. Do you really want to go down this road? Do you really want to go down the drama path? Why do you want to get involved in this? Well, that's not entirely true. Because like I said before, plagiarism on this platform is a massive issue that impacts everyone. And I truly mean everyone. People that actually put in the work are having their material being directly ripped off from others while getting nothing in return. Heck, I've had my work stolen before. I can't link the video because it has since been removed after I issued a copyright takedown. But I'll show you a screenshot of what happens if you go to that URL. About a year ago, I did a video about Minnesota Vikings wide receiver Troy Williamson and how he got fined for attending his grandmother's funeral. You can watch that video that I did by clicking the card in the upper right corner. Little did I know that a few weeks later, someone did a video on that topic. A topic that, mind you, I am the only one on the platform that has done a video on it. So it's not as though this was trendy. But they used my exact scripting parts word for word. And by parts, I mean 3 minutes at a time. I only found out about this by complete chance. But otherwise, YouTube would not have been able to detect that someone just stole my script, and I'd be straight out of luck unless I went and found the video myself. And by that point, it might have been too late. My words, my thoughts, my commentary, attributed to someone else as their own. And that's not the only time a video has been stolen from me. And this is insulting because you might not know this, but I've been sued before for the videos that I put out on this channel. I don't like drama. It's why I've never brought this up and why I've tried my best to stay out of drama in my 4+ years on the platform. Because like I said before, you guys are here for football, and I recognize that, and I fully understand that. And again, I want to make this very clear. This video is a one-time thing barring anything crazy. It brings me no joy to put this video out because it has real-world implications and involves a ton of drama. And my content is usually about the weird and wacky things that happen in the NFL that you might not know about and that you'll never find on Wikipedia. Because one of my golden rules is that if you can find it on Wikipedia, it's too well known for me to do a video on it. But having said all of that, I got sued one time. I didn't want to let you guys know about it. I didn't want to get you guys involved, but I got sued. The video that I got sued for is still up. And I'm not going to reveal who sued me, what the video was, or what went down. But for over a year, I was in a back and forth with a player's lawyer and that specific player over reporting on a story where I put in the work and told factual, verifiable information. So for someone to just come along and steal other people's work while doing no work themselves, and for someone to make their living just stealing the fruits of the labor of other people, is terrible. It's a problem that is prevalent in all areas of YouTube, but especially with sports YouTube, and especially with the career that I've talked about for the last 90 minutes. And the reason that this is important is because with how tight the sports YouTube community is, and I really mean it, it is a super tight community, and with how closely associated and affiliated a lot of us are with each other, one bad apple makes all of us look bad. It's why the Carissa Thompson report ruffled the feathers of a ton of silent reporters, and understandably so. You could be doing everything right, but now, because of her and her lies, the audience is left to doubt you and your credibility, and whether you're doing your job the right way. When one person doesn't do their research and their homework, and is the de facto expert in a field, especially if that's the only video that a person sees from them in that niche, it makes it seem like we all don't do that. It makes it seem like all those videos are exactly the same. It makes it seem like we're all incompetent and thieves and lazy and we spew nonsense and just read Wikipedia articles word for word, which again, could not be further from the truth. Like I said at the start, the vast majority of content creators in this field are amazing people that I'm blessed to know and blessed to call friends. And they have unique insights and do amazing things. And some of them have even been featured by massive publications for their hard work and their dedication to their craft. Tom Grossi puts out a ridiculous amount of original content breaking down the NFL and the Green Bay Packers, all while donating $500,000 to St. Jude's in the span of a month. Brett Coleman breaks down the game in an amazing and insightful way, and his work was even recognized by the NFL, to the point where he is now making videos for the league on their channel. I could go on and on. There are so many of us out there that are doing things the quote-unquote right way, that are using our platform responsibly and for good. And to see a man like this tarnish this for 99% of us out there doing things the right way, and steal content like this, yeah, it stinks. There's no other way to put it. It just really stinks. And it's kind of disheartening, knowing that there are people busting their butts and not getting the recognition they deserve, while blatant misinformation and stealing is promoted, oftentimes without the original author of the work in question ever knowing about it. So I'll leave you on this note. I don't know what exactly "let's go to war" means, whether that means a lawsuit or anything like that or whatever. But I can assure you, Patrick, I'm right here. I'm not going to let you disgrace the sports YouTube community. I'm not going to let you spit in the face of people who actually do research and work hard to try to even have a fraction of the subscribers and views that you have. I'm not going to let you disrespect all the journalists that you've stolen from over the years to make your living. Plagiarism is absolutely unacceptable. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I promise you this much. If you steal from me or any of my peers that I'm blessed to know, there will be legal trouble. I don't know what you want to do from here, but I know this much. There are countless of us who will continue to make educational, informative, and original content without blatantly stealing. There are countless of us who will continue to value the time of our community more than just rehashing Wikipedia page word for word that you can get in 30 seconds. That is not creation. That is not an occupation. That is theft. That is being a thief. Plain and simple, you are a thief. And for all those who actually create, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Seriously. People like you help make the platform what it is. You creating videos and expressing your thoughts into the world takes guts. It takes skill. It takes courage. Even if your take might be wrong or might not be the best, or even if you might look back on it years down the road and cringe, it's at least something. It's at least you. It's at least authentic. So I'll leave you on that. Be you. It's called YouTube for a reason, not WikiTube. YouTube. You. Doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. Just be you. Everyone would much rather hear someone's actual opinion and thoughts on something than be spoon-fed something that they can find in 5 seconds. Even though it's easy to be discouraged, especially in light of everything I presented, being you is how you're going to make it on this platform. There's a million people who can just regurgitate Wikipedia articles and call it a day. They'll be unfulfilled. They will not have accomplished anything. There's only one person, though, who can say what you can. There's only one person who knows your voice and knows how to channel it. And that's you. Because as the great Mr. Rogers always said, there's only one person in this whole world like you. And people can like you exactly as you are.